Dennis Oyas started coughing in late 2019 in a Washington state prison and kept on coughing for a year and a half until he'd broken 3 of his ribs. In addition to his cough, Mr. Oyas started having trouble breathing. "Every time I called home," he said, "you could hear me coughing. I couldn't get full 20-minute conversations with my family because of shortness of breath." Mr. Oya knew he might be suffering from tuberculosis, TB, because he'd been diagnosed with the infection as a boy. But when he reported his problems to health staff, he was tested for COVID-19, and when that workup was negative, he was assessed for having a hernia and allergies. Mr. Oya would go almost 18 months before the health staff in his prison listened to him, conducted a test for TB, and finally diagnosed him with a treatable but deadly and highly communicable disease. His infection would trigger one of the largest prison TB outbreaks in decades. Like many people who contract an infection behind bars, he didn't worry just for himself, but for the people around him too. "There are plenty of other people around me who are put in danger. Like my cousin, got tuberculosis. One of my other cellies, he got tuberculosis because of me." This TB outbreak would march across 2 of the state's prisons and infect 25 people. In order to map out the extent of the outbreak, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and Washington health officials identified over 3,000 people who were close contacts, including staff and incarcerated people at 5 different prisons, as well as incarcerated people who had returned home. Although 25 people were identified as contracting pulmonary TB from this single case, a total of 244 contacts appeared to have contracted a latent TB infection, meaning they didn't have any known prior exposure to TB and now tested positive. In these cases of latent TB, the bacterium is somewhere in a person's body, but it's not causing a lung infection. Yet. About 5 to 10% of people with latent TB will develop TB infection at some point in their lives, most often in the 2 years after exposure. TB is a good model for learning about outbreaks behind bars, because the disease is the leading infectious cause of death worldwide, and it's basically a disease of poverty. Rates of TB are usually higher behind bars than outside, with a recent study showing worldwide rates are 10 times higher in prisons than within local communities. In the United States, jails and prisons have long made an effort to screen people for TB, but the way these systems fail illuminate the systemic weaknesses of correctional health during other outbreaks. Case Study Analysis. 2 problems stand out with how Mr. Oya was treated. First, the prison he was in already had a policy to recheck everyone for new physical signs and symptoms of TB annually. This is a standard practice in jails and prisons, and it includes an encounter at each 1-year mark of incarceration to ask a series of questions about TB, including whether or not an inmate is experiencing night sweats, cough, weight loss, fever or chills, and several other potential symptoms. The epidemiologist who wrote about Mr. Oya's case, Dr. Catherine Walter, reported that these yearly checks weren't happening because of the strain of responding to COVID-19. There is no doubt COVID-19 outbreaks in jails and prisons caused extreme spikes in illness and death, and increased pressure on medical systems. And when a health system is overwhelmed with an emergency, it might reasonably delay some types of encounters. That isn't what happened with Mr. Oya, though.